I was thinking high roller. It felt because I think
High
high
roller.
roller B tier because yeah,
What?
there's a chance you'd have a pretty good life. There's a chance you'd have an epic life.
Might also have obligations. If you were a farmer, it might be that your family runs a farm, and then you are going to run the farm after them. And if you don't run the farm, they will die.
Where working people would rent there so that they could live in the city and have the jobs. But the rent would be very exploitative prices. Welcome to the Village of Empires. My name is Seb, I'm with Rob, and today we're going to be talking about what the average life was like in the Byzantine Empire under the Macedonian Dynasty. And we're going to end with our daily life tier list, where we rank it up against the other civilizations we've done in the past. So Rob, why don't you start by telling us what you found out?
For all of the Byzantine Empire, it was an agrarian society. So
Farming and
let's talk
stuff.
about farming.
Mm.
Farming being the main source of the economy. So let's talk about what they ate. So all of these dishes would have been available under the Macedonian dynasty, but some of them would have obviously, again, with food, it kind of stretches out a longer period of time than that. It doesn't have massive swathes of existence of things that move between. So I'm going to talk about some ingredients and some recipes, some for the upper class, some for the lower class, some that still exist today in a slightly altered form. And the first one is for the commoners,
Okay.
and it's called fake soup.
Fuck.
So if you want to bring up what it looks like,
Fuck soup.
what do you think this is?
Looks like lentils or something.
Yeah, yeah. It contains lentils, onion, garlic, olive oil, bay leaves, honey, vinegar, salt, and if available, other vegetables like leeks, celery, and dill.
Okay, so realistically, then, if we were going back in time and ending up here, this is probably what we're gonna be eating a lot of the time. I like the
Yeah.
fact that it's olive oil. It's very on brand with the Byzantines.
Oh, and also vinegar is very on brand. Apparently, they loved adding vinegar to things.
Oh, okay, cool, cool.
That's a very common ingredient. They like that kind of a tang.
Yeah, well, I can see how if food maybe tastes crap, like it's quite a easy way to give it like a punch, isn't it? So yeah.
Yeah. So modern variations. This soup still exists today. So modern variations often include like a tomato base. So I actually struggled to find one that was more of a pure version
Okay.
of the soup because
All
they're all kind of
right.
like tomato, and it looks so much nicer as well.
Okay.
Honest with you.
Yeah.
But obviously, for when the Macedonian dynasty was around, tomatoes hadn't yet arrived from South America. So the meal was actually also eaten by the upper class when fasting, which was every Wednesday and Friday. You would abstain from meat, eggs, and dairy. And bigger fasts would be at events like Lent. Like for instance, I think it was about 4 major events
I suppose that
that
makes
would have had like
sense. Highly religious
yeah.
society, from what I've found.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, but I mean, when they say fasting, because the larger, obviously, fast for the big ones might be like a full day of no eating. But generally, it's just no meat, eggs, and dairy is pretty, fine for most people. Especially something like this. Actually, to me, sounds all right. Like it's not going to be the most exciting meal, but it sounds
it'll
pretty
do.
good. If they had like more spice options at the time, if you could get some dill in it to it, I reckon that'd be quite tasty. The next thing I really want to talk about is actually a fermented fish sauce called garum.
Okay.
Um, I want you to imagine what it tastes like. So the closest thing is kind of like modern fish sauce that used in like a lot of East Asian cooking.
Okay, I think.
Like essentially, kind of ancient MSG is the way I'm going to describe it.
Ancient MSG, love it. Yeah, or medieval MSG is perhaps more
Or
appropriate.
medieval, yes, because we're not in the ancient times. So it's
uh,
medieval MSG. Garum originated with the ancient Greeks.
okay,
Uh,
so it goes way back.
goes way back. It was popularized by the Romans, and it was so popular with the Romans that it's often described as like ancient ketchup, like ketchup of the
Nice.
Roman world. Like Romans ketchup. Um,
Let's put it on everything then.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, to be fair, hopefully sparingly, because if it says as strong as it looks,
Looks pungent.
it looks pungent indeed. Um, but it was so important to local cuisine at the time, and actually, its popularity almost kind of flourished and diminished alongside the Byzantine Empire. So let me go into why. So garum kind of depended on a substantial fishing fleet. It required weeks of fermentation and demanded extensive beachfront facilities. So interestingly, its most skilled producers operated in Spain and France, while its largest markets were Italy and Greece.
All right.
So So it's interesting. So the sailors and ships became scarce during wars accompanying Rome and later Byzantine collapses. So in such unstable times, merchants who relied on large labor forces, kind of coastal real estate, and credit between long production cycles, faced severe strain. And warfare and conquest kind of shattered some established trade routes. And then the kind of almost more crucial bit, and this is kind of again with the kind of the collapse of the Byzantine Empire, um, the kind of new ruling elites of the Mediterranean, so kind of more Germanic in the west and Arab in the east, they kind of had little interest in this source in Garum. So yeah, it just ended up being like it was interesting that it's survived for so long, and then the Byzantine Empire was the last society that used it, and
I'm not gonna lie, it didn't look very appetizing, so I'm not gonna be like, no, if only we still had that, you know. But I'm happy for them that they had some nice. It looked like they had a variety of options, you know, and some actually kind of tasty things instead of just like we eat this to survive.
so really, like, so they had like other common dishes that we like seeing today, like moussaka. Moussaka still a dish existed
That's
back then.
yum. I know that one. That's the first one that you
Yeah.
said that I actually like know what it is.
Uh, like I think it was like called like clefdedes, which is like kind of like little meatballs.
Sounds
Those sort of
good.
things. Again, meat and fish, as common with all these societies, much more rarity that get eaten by the common folk. They're much more of a you have it at rare times.
Hmm.
Um, but they did. There is some like a lot of the modern Greek food that exists today. So this it's interesting. The food is less Italian and more Greek side. If you think about kind of the flavor profile we're
Yeah.
thinking of here and stuff they'd be eating. So there is quite a few. If you actually look at some modern Greek dishes that still existed back from this kind of period in the Byzantine Empire.
I'm going to talk about the Queen of Cities, which is what Constantinople was referred to as, and what life there would have been like. And up to 400,000 people could have lived there. And the rich,
Which
they,
which for the time is really big population.
yeah, definitely. So the rich, they had central heating, which they inherited from the Romans. You know,
Mm.
like that old technique with
Yeah.
the hypercaust system with the water essentially running
It's
through.
it's kind of like underfloor heating, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's how they
yeah,
did
yeah,
it.
exactly. But the regular people wouldn't have had that. The regular people would have burnt charcoal to stay warm, which is very relevant in how cold it is today in the UK. So I
But
figured I'd start with
it
that.
is freezing. It is absolutely. It just suddenly went to like it was snowing for me yesterday. I don't know whether it snowed for you.
Yeah, it was snowing. Yeah, it was snowing here,
Yeah,
and that's why if us regular plebs, we'd be burning some charcoal right now to keep warm.
but again, from this region though, it's not going to be as. It's not like you're in Britain where it is a very cold place. It is
No,
obviously they get colder days, and obviously it's different. Again, 1,000 years ago, the climate would be in a very different place than it is
true. Yeah,
today.
we forget that
But but
sometimes. Yeah.
but I feel like it still wouldn't have been quite as bad.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think you're right. So there'd be jugglers on the streets. Life was vibrant, energetic. There'd be the smells of sizzling foods, perhaps some of the ones you talked to us about just now.
Mhm.
Lots of wine would be available. There'd be incredibly impressive art and generally a very religious place, as we touched on. Of course. The thing I find most amazing though, Rob, yeah, get this.
Go on.
They had flats. Like, as in, like, apartments. Like,
Really?
there were loads of towering blocks of apartments. I say apartments for the
Like,
Americans and the universal audience, but we call it flats here in the UK.
how tall? Like how many? How?
That's that's a good point. How many stories? I'm not sure, but many. Like to the point where the silhouettes, the skyline of the city would
Wow.
have these towers. And get
I mean,
this,
if you think
yeah,
about some of the buildings people have made back then, you can kind of see. It's more surprising you almost don't see it as often in the kind of the ancient world because they used to build like churches which are like like super tall
yeah,
with
yeah.
options for floors in them. So we just never did it with any housing.
It just kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That's that's kind of cool. And then here's the funny thing. Yeah, I get this. So these entire multi-story buildings where working people would rent there so that they could live in the city and have
Mhm.
the jobs. But the rent would be very exploitative prices. so, so everyone would be complaining about rent prices all the time while going to work. It's just feeling
Yeah,
familiar.
yeah.
So yeah, but still, despite all of that though, despite those prices, it was only like a little bit better than just living in the slums. The conditions of these flats were bad. I generally described as the wealth divide was just pretty bad generally, It's unsurprising given we're talking about the Middle Ages, but still worth
Yeah.
considering in a daily life episode where we're going to imagine, what it would have been like to live there ourselves. It is worth bearing this in mind. This is interesting as well. There was no legal status actually given to nobles. So unlike the West, where you were born into status because of, like
Ah.
your family and stuff that you're in, it wasn't like that. So that meant that it was possible for nobles to lose their status by losing their wealth. They make a mistake, they mess up. It also meant that if you were someone's, son or whatever, okay, you were already wealthy, so you're probably most likely to keep that status, but not guaranteed, right? Not guaranteed. And that the regular peasant could rise up. For example, as we talked about a couple of episodes ago, Basil the First, the guy who founded the
Yeah.
Macedonian dynasty, went from peasant all the way to emperor, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, right?
It does give people. It also gives the common person hope as well.
Yeah,
Like also that fact that Basil the First, people would have known that he was a commoner turned to emperor,
yeah.
and probably it's a story that he was probably quite proud of. And I'm sure then the citizens are like, "Wow, it could be me."
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone works
exactly.
hard to think they could be me.
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't have to make it to emperor to have a good life, right? You just need
No,
to make it
no.
like a little bit above where you are. And I guess like, is this like the Byzantine dream? Like everyone
Yeah,
moves to the city to
yeah.
try and make it, right? I don't know, but I just think
Is
that
is like New York in the like is it 30s? Is the big one?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, not too familiar. Americans, let us know. The land of opportunity, right? But I just think it's interesting to consider because there was hope. There was a chance it could happen. Now the wealthy did everything they could to maintain power. Don't get me wrong; they're the ones with
Of
the
course,
money, they're
it
the
would just
influence, they had the ears of the people in
never
charge.
change. They'll never change the society.
Once again, it's seeming weirdly familiar, right? It's seeming, but yeah, there's a chance, and I think that's important. Whereas in some places there just absolutely wasn't. Your name immediately confined you to a life of whatever. The lack of feudal system made it surprisingly modern in my opinion, like and
Mm.
surprisingly modern for its time. The empire was really bureaucratic, and we've kind of touched on that in previous ways, in previous episodes. But in many ways, this kind of bureaucracy and stuff, it made the lives of ordinary people function quite well. There was like structure to society and order, and things happened on time, and there were certain things you could expect to happen at certain times of
Mhm.
the day, and there was law and some order. But another way, another thing I really like about imagining what it's like to live there is let's have a little throwback to the Hippodrome of Constantinople from a couple of episodes ago. Now I'm going to bring up an image here for those of you watching. So this is a spectacular arena. We'll talk about a little bit. We talked about it a little bit more before, but just a quick summary: a spectacular arena for chariot racing that's attached to the palace itself. It was magnificent. It was somewhere that everyone went to see. It was like the main event here. You can see in this image, people are like cheering and yelling and stuff like that. And this doesn't even do it justice because I found out, get this, Rob, another thing that is just, I love, and it's just so, it's been 1,000 years, but it's so funny how not that much has changed, okay? So get
Go
this.
on.
It was so popular chariot racing, right? And there was a lot of money involved in this sport. And there were four great teams: the Reds, the Blues, the Greens, and the Whites.
Are you going to talk about match fixing here?
No, 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 no. Just
Oh,
like, just
okay.
not quite, not quite. You'll see. So each one was tied to a political party. So naturally,
Okay.
given the ties to politics, they meant there was intense rivalries in these races,
Oh,
and the
okay. More like
support.
hooliganism then I'm
Yes,
imagining
you
here.
got it. You got it. Chariot hooliganism was massive, massive. So there would be fierce support from the fans. Fights were like so uncommon. It would just happen every match where
So
the
common, you mean?
so on. Damn it! Yeah, you know what I mean. So common, right? So these lot, they would meet and then have big fights and brawls. It would be happening all over the place, and it kind of just makes me think of like these are like some of the worst that you can imagine. So I kind of think of like Russian football fans and a little bit like Polish football fans. No offense, but your hooligans. Don't get me wrong, like English hooligans, we're up there too. But in terms of like the
We used to
ranking,
be. We used to be. We don't have the title as much as we used to anymore. We banned a lot of people when it's kind of
we did a thing, isn't it? There was a lot
yeah, we
of
did a lot of work to reduce it.
in the
If you do
police.
British hooligans in the 80s, we were the number one.
Yeah,
But
that's gone quite a bit down to where it used to be. But I think like in terms of Europe, I mean, around the world, like I heard that apparently Egypt has some of the most insane football hooligans like in the world. Like
mm,
apparently some of them have led to actual like riots and coups and stuff. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but like yeah, like actually like it's crazy. I know South America as well, but we're not here to talk about Monday football. Beyond the sporting events, the city was utterly incredible, and one of the other things that was around was the, I might say this wrong, but the Hagia Sophia, I think. If you jump to the next image,
Yeah.
Rob. So luckily, oh sorry, this one here is just the what was left of the Hippodrome today in Istanbul. If you wanted to go, it's called Sultan something Square. Yeah, so unfortunately that one's not left. But something that is left is the Hagia Sophia. So here we go. This is it also in Istanbul today. Look at that thing, man. Look at
It's
that thing.
incredible.
That is amazing. Now imagine seeing that 1,000 years ago. Like that is
I know, it would have blown your mind, wouldn't it?
it blows my mind now. Like so back
Yeah.
then it must have been absolutely crazy. So what is this thing? It's firstly it's the Wonder from Age of Empires 4. If you play the Byzantines, that's the Wonder you build. But in real life it was a church, and nowadays though it's a mosque. It's been converted, of course, by the Turkish.
It was a museum until a few years ago, though.
Oh, is it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
they literally only a few years ago turned it back to being a mosque. It was a church, a mosque, a museum, and a mosque again.
Another epic thing is cisterns, and again, if you play Byzantines in Age of Empires 4, you know that this is quite a common thing. But like, cisterns, so the Constantinople had an immense freshwater storage system. These massive cisterns were fed by long aqueducts, which channeled water into the city from Thrace, for example. And if the aqueducts were ever cut during a siege, the city would survive on stored water for months. So in the image here, we've got like, it's a tourist destination, this one here, that you can go and walk around today, again in Istanbul. Generally, the grandeur and importance of this city reminds me of Tenochtitlan and from our Aztec series.
Sure, yeah.
And I think even the siege as well, and how they had their aqueducts cut and things. I don't know, just for me, just I saw a lot of parallels, maybe because we've done it recently. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this video so far, a like goes a really, really long way. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. These were enormous infrastructure projects, and one of them, if you go to the next image, it's actually been turned into a football stadium.
Oh,
So
really?
you can see there's that wall in the background is like the old walls from the cistern. So just to give you an idea of like, these things were so big you could fit entire football stadiums in them. But this were huge projects. I was going to say like,
And multiple of them. Like, you think like
yeah.
one of the things this size would have been enough, but
Yeah, it's crazy.
that's
It's crazy to think. And I was going to say, like, so impressive for its time. It's so impressive for now. How many infrastructure projects have you seen of this size? Like, I don't know in what countries you guys are from, but most of our viewers are UK. Guys, you don't need me to say it. It's not happening, is it? It's just not happening. I've managed to find some quotes from actual tourists at the time who visited this city, because I figured their words make more sense, right? I'm imagining it like you. They saw it with their actual eyes and wrote about it. And also, just FYI, I paraphrased a little bit just to condense them and make them shorter. I haven't changed words or anything, but like just to make it a little bit more flow a little better, okay? Keep it streamlined. Here's one from a visiting pilgrim, okay? It is impossible to go to all the holy monasteries or holy relics. There are thousands upon thousands and many wonders which is impossible to describe. At the palace, I lost my companions in the crowd, so I stepped up on top of a base pillar to try and see them. Instead, I caught a glimpse of the imperial family, wearing the most luxurious golden robes, wearing golden crowns. However, I was rudely knocked off the pillar by some of the imperial guards and sent sprawling onto the stone floor. And think, that imperial guard would have been a Varangian.
yeah.
Right, so one of these guys showed up, was like, "Oi, get down from there!" Just knocks him down because everyone's, imagine being like this huge crowd of sea of people.
It's like it's like going to Buckingham Palace and then trying some kind of climb on the gates. To,
Yeah, exactly. I like that quote, and I included it because I just think it shows like the level of busyness. This is like capital city with a lot of people. It's not just those people who live there. There are people visiting all the time, coming in and out. It is so.
And not just traders, then, from the sound of it, because otherwise, normally it would be just just people coming through for trade. But if it's people coming through because they just want to see it,
Yeah,
but probably a lot of pilgrims as well would come through.
Remember, there was at that time catching a glimpse of the imperial family. Like there were no photos or anything, so if you saw them, you're like, "Oh my god, that's actually them!" Like, "Oh wow, look how shiny and like cool they look," with all their gold. So yeah, you can see that. So I have another one from a completely different kind of person. This is a French knight visiting. So coming over from Western Europe, he says this: "In this city, there are Greeks, Bulgarians, Italians, Venetians, Romanians, Dacians, English, even Turks, many heathen peoples, Jews, proselytes, Cretans, and Arabs, and people of all nations come together. So I thought that was interesting because it was, for me, it's like it shows how, I guess you could say, multicultural is. Like, it's not just
Yeah.
these Greeks that we keep talking about. Loads of people come to this city and work in this city or live there and stuff. And I just thought it was very interesting. Clearly, this knight was very like blown away by.
It might well be then like the first proper multicultural city then.
I
Because
don't know
what
if it's
other
the first,
examples
but
do you have that is really going to be like that?
yeah, it's
I
amazing.
can't think of any.
All right, here's one from another visitor. Constantinople is a city of extremes that surpasses other cities in wealth, but in many places is in permanent darkness. For the wealthy overshadow the streets with buildings and leave the dirty, dark streets to the poor. Murders and robberies happen there. The city is untouched by the law. All the rich men are bullies, and many of the poor are thieves. So I like that one because obviously there's always going to be like positivity, but it's interesting that at the time we have these quotes from people who are like, oh, "I hate this city. It's so gross" and stuff like that. And am I the
I
only
mean,
one thinking of London here?
you talk about London though.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
talk about London,
exactly.
it's,
Yeah, I was thinking about London, and again, I'm not saying that London is like this, but if you go online or whatever, you hear people's opinions on London. Some people
yeah,
describe it like this. They say like,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is some
absolutely.
hellhole. Never go there. Da 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 da.
Everyone's going to try and rob you. Everyone's
Yeah,
going to try and scam you. Like,
exactly. I just found when I was researching for this episode, I just found it remarkable the amount of like parallels and comparisons there
mm,
were, and genuinely, I've developed like such an interest in this place. I totally get it now. Now let's finish with one more, okay? One more. I know I'm pushing my
okay.
time limit here. This one's from your boy Vladimir, Rob, who you talked about
Oh,
previously,
yeah,
the
yeah,
one who
yeah.
provided the
Basil.
Varangian Guard, who apparently became a Basil, but we're not going to confuse the audience again, right? So Vladimir of Kiev, when he went back home, he described Constantinople like this: "We knew not whether we were in heaven or earth, for on earth there is no such splendor or such beauty. We only knew that gods dwell there among men." I said gods with an S, my bad. God, singular, obviously. I feel it's important to note something before we move on to the final tier list placement. I said Constantinople can be up to 400,000 people, right? Well, the Byzantine Empire's population is 15 to 20 million. So up to 10 million of those would have been living in the Anatolia region. So if I jump to this image here of the empire's borders, obviously this was very fluid because they're changing a lot. But during the Macedonian dynasty era, at its height, I believe, it looks something like this. You don't need to read the text. I know it's a bit small, but I'm just showing you like the map of the world here. There's a red
The
circle.
purple's the important bit.
Yeah, the purple's important, exactly. The red circle is circling Constantinople, but look at all these other territories they had, right? So if you're going to be a random Byzantine, you could have ended up in any of these places, let's just say. Yeah, go on.
We're still also the point where about 90% of people would have been rural.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, and that makes
So,
sense, right?
the chances of who you be, obviously, you can go to visit Constantinople. There's
Yeah,
nothing stopping you from being one of these tourists.
absolutely,
It could be the
absolutely.
highlight of your life.
If you're on the edges, you're very vulnerable to piracy and raids, and
Mhm.
war might be regularly on your doorstep. But I will say this: you could move to the city, nothing stopping you, as we just said. Remember, Basil the First
Well,
was from Macedonia, hence the Macedonian Dynasty. So he
yes
moved
and
there, and
no,
look what he achieved.
but it was actually way more difficult in these times in general for people to move because you think about it, if unless you had so first you'd need money, then you'd need supplies to be able to do things like that, and for most people you're only living day to day enough to build up supplies money. You might also have like obligations. If you were a farmer, it might be that your family is runs a farm and then you are going to run the farm after them, and if you don't run the farm, they will die because they won't have anyone after
Yeah,
them to look after it.
true, true. But a
So
man can dream, man. A man can dream.
yeah, you can be that sort of thing where it's always like some people are like, oh, I dream that in the next place I could do this, and sometimes it just never happens because
True, but hey,
life
it's
gets in the
important to
way.
have a dream. At least then there's hope.
That's it. And that's the thing is that knowing that, like, you would have known, like, oh, Constantinople, I've heard about all the, his
Yeah,
stories coming from there. And
yeah, it'd be crazy. So we're gonna move on to our game now, the tier list, where we're gonna place the Macedonian dynasty civilization up against other civilizations that we've covered in the past across the Age of Empires series. I mentioned that stuff about the population sizes and things because when we're playing this game, which is if you were a random person born there, uh, how good would it be? But the way we've done it in the past, if I bring up the tier list here, is like when we talked about the Aztecs, for example, we talked about the people who are defined as Aztec, so the Triple Alliance, so Tenochtitlan, I forgot the other two, the Triple Alliance, but not the others underneath them, right?
Tlaxcala was one of them, isn't it?
Tashkala? No, 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 no. That's the other.
That's the enemies. That's
That's
the
the
enemy.
yeah. So when we
Yeah.
talked about the Swedes and we placed them on this tier list, we didn't count the Finns, even though they were under the Swedish Empire, right?
True.
And so I just think that's important to
True.
remember when we're
Well,
placing
we,
them.
we we didn't do that because we wanted to potentially cover them at some other point down the line.
True, true, but I think it's worth mentioning that, like, if you're a
Yeah.
random person who's caught under the banner of the Byzantine Empire, I'm not sure that makes you a Byzantine, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. True.
I don't know. I just want to clarify the rules with you
It,
before we place.
that's very interesting. Yeah, I didn't actually think about that. I was thinking it being the whole
That's what
empire,
I thought, but
but
then I was like, no, because let me put it this way, right? We got House of Lancaster on here, but like they had a
yeah,
big chunk of France, but we're not counting Frenchmen when we're deciding like
yeah. Well,
whether
it
it's
was
good or
like,
not to be part of the House of Lancaster kind of era. So,
oh, yeah,
but in
that's
my
very true.
opinion, it should
Then who would
Greeks,
you count?
Greeks, and therefore you're way
Who's the
more
Greek?
likely to end up in
Which,
Constantinople.
which, which, to be fair, might be making this better because you're then much further away from a lot of the conflict.
Yeah, I don't know though. I don't know. Just something to bear in mind. So the rules. Let's talk about a little bit more details for people who are new, right? We have a tier list here: S tier, A tier, B, C, D, and F, and we're gonna place it based on if you were a random person born in this time, how much would it suck, basically? And S tier is pretty great. A tier, surprisingly okay. B tier, high roller, right? So it could be good, but it could be bad, and it's purely luck, depending on who you are. C is tolerable if lucky, which is look, it's probably bad, but like maybe you can get by and have an okay life. D, guaranteed bad time. It's just not. It's just you're just not gonna have a good time. And F is please God no. This is the worst of the worst.
And to remind people, this is not like comparing to modern day. It's almost comparing to each other.
Yes,
So when we say pretty great, it's not saying that
I
it's
want to
better
live
than
there.
today. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're not
It's
saying
just
that.
saying as it goes, throughout history, it's a pretty good time.
I looked it up. 5% of adult males were soldiers. Either
Okay.
local defense force or professional standing army, usually in Constantinople. Famously, they used a lot of foreign mercenaries. So, being
Yep.
a random Byzantine or Macedonian dynastian, you are not. I don't think that likely to be fighting in war, right? Which sucks. I think we can all agree.
And if you are a soldier, you likely owned your own land. That's how a lot of the time they got the soldiers they had were they gave them land and a small like farming plot to be able to like almost like that's the kind of their reward for being a soldier.
All right, there you go. Yeah, so that, I thought that was a positive there. And crucially, I looked this up, the health and disease element. There were no plague outbreaks recorded during the Macedonian dynasty timeline. I think that's really important given
Mm,
that plague, Black Death
very
is all
important.
over Europe. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean there was no plague. I just mean that there wasn't like a massive sweeping one, you know, the ones you hear about, which like decimates the whole population kind of thing. That kills a huge chunk of them. So it did happen in Byzantine history, but I think it was earlier and after, but not actually during. So,
Okay.
dare I say it was a relatively safe time to be a Byzantine, because it depends where you live. What do you think?
I have to say, like to everything that I'm looking at, I'm potentially going S tier.
Really, S tier. Okay.
Yeah, like as it goes. To be honest, I like Greek food. It seems like food was relatively abundant in general.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, you always have it where there's limited, meat options. But again, I eat mostly vegetarian now. I
Yeah.
like it. I think it's really good stuff. Obviously, again, you'd had the some spices coming through rarely. The fact that you had kind of options for that, it seems that you had some social mobility, even though it's kind of unlikely. Most likely be a farmer, which is again common for most of kind of history.
I don't know. Seems okay. But let me challenge your S tier then, because I don't agree.
Okay, go on.
So, yes, I know I've talked a lot about how amazing a lot of it probably is, especially in the capital. But there was a reason why I included that quote about the person who didn't like it and the crime and the murder and the
Mhm.
robberies. That if you were poor, it was bad. Like I think it was
But
there's
that's port in Constantinople, though, isn't it?
I mean yeah, but like surely it's not any better outside, no? I mean, what are you going to do outside? Like, I think that the wealth divide was kind of brutal. There was, again, as I said, even if you are outside in the Greek islands, constant like very very regular Muslim piracy. Like, the Arabs will come a lot and raid your
Sure.
lands, and when they raid, they're not just like going like, oh, excuse me, I just need some of your money. No, they're taking everything, often you.
I think for the majority, I think the likelihood of you were one of those people in an area which would be affected, I think is very low. I think it's a low chance that you'd be affected, and I think as a whole, I'm still. Let's think about it this way. Let's do a comparison game here then, because we put Swedes in A, as surprisingly okay.
Yeah.
There was plagues, there was famines,
Hmm.
but it wasn't that bad. But comparatively, there was no famines, there was no plagues.
I
You
I
might
think
be raided, but again, I think that's like throughout a lot of history, you might be raided.
I was thinking high roller. It felt because I think
High
high
roller.
roller would beat it because yeah,
What?
there's a chance you'd have a pretty good life. There's a chance you'd have an epic life. But I just also think there's a chance you'd be a beggar on the street with nothing. And I don't know. I just think
Uh,
that's a big dice roll,
okay,
man.
but again, the beggar on the street, though, this is again relying on the fact that you are living in Constantinople. I think when you go out the outskirts, you'd still be day labor style stuff that you would survive on. You wouldn't be kind of a beggar in the streets the same way, unless you were sick.
But that's the same in all these places, unfortunately.
All these places, yeah.
Is it better or worse than Swedes from Age of Empires 3? This is the Swedish Empire Gustavus, the Lion of the North era.
So part of the reason, obviously, that went higher as well is kind of like some of it is kind of the more modern amenities of it.
Yeah,
But you have to say, if you look at rural, probably being quite similar, and if you're talking about Constantinople and the cities, they had Roman architecture, which is incredibly modern for its time.
yeah.
Again,
Advanced, yeah.
less plagues. Obviously, again, we have the benefit of a lot of mercenary usage, which is
Yeah.
kind of both of them had that same similar benefit.
With the Swedish Empire as well, I think we pretty much established that the end of the empire was bleak when the Russians were
Mhm.
basically taking everything, and like a lot of the male population was decimated. But before that, we decided that actually like it wasn't that bad, that the food was all right, the life seemed okay, everyone was
Yeah.
a farmer, but it was fulfilling work.
This is Rob asking you to give us a 5-star or a like wherever you're watching. Thank you very much, and back to the podcast.
I will allow it. We can put them in the top
Okay.
of A
I,
tier
I
above the
think
Swedes.
this one we definitely need people to weigh in on this. Obviously, some people weren't happy with my S tier for the Aztecs. Again, in the future we can move things
Yeah.
if we want to. This is not always set in stone. But let us know what you think. Whether you think this is where you're happy. Do you agree with Seb? Do you think it should be? Do you agree with me
Yeah.
that it's the S, or do you think that the A is about right?